Okay, so you've probably heard of the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? It's one of those books that's literally changed how millions of people see money. And it's not by pushing some get-rich-quick scheme. Nope, it's all about giving you a totally new framework for financial literacy. So today, that's what we're going to do. We're going to break down those core frameworks, almost like a straight-up lecture on the most important lessons from the book. All right, let's get into it. So here's our game plan. We're going to hit 5 key ideas. First up, the 2 completely different mindsets that are at the heart of everything. Then we'll talk about what he calls the rat race, that cycle so many people feel trapped in. After that, we get to the absolute core of it all, the one rule you have to know: assets versus liabilities. Then we'll actually draw it out so you can see it, and we'll wrap up with this powerful piece of advice: mind your own business. All right, so the whole book, the whole idea, it's built around this really personal story. The author, Robert Kiyosaki, he basically had 2 dads, and they had completely, and I mean completely, opposite views on money. You had his real father, who was super educated but always struggled with money. That's the poor dad. And then you had his best friend's dad, an entrepreneur who became incredibly wealthy. That's the rich dad. And this right here, this just nails the difference between them in one simple sentence. It's all about one little word. Poor dad's advice was to go work for a good company, right? Become a good employee. But rich dad's advice, it was to go buy a good company, become an owner. See the difference? One path has you working for your money, and the other path is all about making your money work for you. And here's another perfect example of how differently they saw the world when it came to risk. Poor dad's philosophy was basically, don't take risks, play it safe. He saw money through this lens of fear. But rich dad, he saw it totally differently. For him, it wasn't about avoiding risk. No way. It was about learning how to manage risk. He saw it like a game, something you could learn the rules to and get really good at. So, what's the big problem that all these lessons are trying to fix? Well, Kiyosaki gives it a name that's become pretty famous: the rat race. He describes it as this trap that so many people in the poor and middle class get stuck in no matter how hard they seem to work. So what is this cycle? It's basically this: get up, go to work, pay the bills. Then you do it again. Get up, go to work, pay the bills. And he says it's all driven by 2 really powerful emotions: fear and greed. Think about it. The fear of not having money is what gets you up and out the door to your job. But then the second you get that paycheck, greed, or, just the desire for nicer stuff, kicks in and you go spend it. It's a vicious cycle that keeps you hooked on that next paycheck. The book uses this analogy that is just perfect. It's like a donkey pulling a cart, and the owner is dangling a carrot just out of its reach. The donkey keeps pulling, thinking it's about to get the carrot, but it never does. Well, that carrot, that's your paycheck. It keeps you moving, keeps you working harder, but you never actually get ahead. You're just chasing this illusion, always just trying to catch up. Okay, let's shift gears now, because we are getting to what is probably the single most important lesson in the entire book. According to Rich Dad, if you can just get this one simple rule down, you hold the key to building wealth. Seriously, everything else we talk about is built on this one foundation. So, first question, and I want you to forget all the complicated, jargon-filled definitions you might have heard from, accountants or financial advisors. Rich Dad's whole thing was about keeping it super, super simple. So, what is an asset? An asset puts money in my pocket. That's it. That is the entire definition. Full stop. If something is generating income for you, if it's adding money to your bank account, especially when you're not actively working for it, it's an asset. Simple, right? But so powerful. And here's what that looks like visually. This diagram is so important to understand. You have your assets. Think of things like rental properties, stocks that pay out dividends, maybe a business you own that runs without you. All of those things generate cash, and that cash flows into your income column. This right here, this is the engine of wealth creation. All right, so that's an asset. Pretty straightforward. So what's the flip side of the coin? What's a liability? A liability takes money out of my pocket. Again, it's just that simple. If an asset puts money in, a liability takes money out. It costs you money every single month. There's really no gray area. It's black and white. And here's the diagram for that. A liability, like your car payments, student loans, credit card debt, it creates payments that flow directly out of your pocket and into your expense column. It's just a constant drain, pulling money away from you.
Okay, this is where it all comes together. This is the real heart of the lecture. Because when we put these simple diagrams together, we can actually map out the financial story of pretty much anyone's life. And it shows you crystal clear why the rich get richer and why so many others just seem to be treading water.
So let's start with the cash flow pattern of a poor person. Look at the diagram. Money comes in from a job, and it flows straight back out to cover expenses. Taxes, rent, food, transportation. But look closely. What's the most important thing to notice? The asset column is totally empty. There's nothing there to generate more income. It's a one-way street. Money in, money out. Okay, now let's look at the middle class. The income is usually higher, which is great, but here's the trap. That extra income gets used to buy liabilities that people think are assets. A mortgage, a car loan, credit card debt for that new TV. All of these things fill up the liability column. And what do liabilities do? They create more expenses. So even with a bigger paycheck, they're just locked even tighter into the rat race. And finally, here's the goal. This is the cash flow pattern of the rich. For them, the asset column is the main event. It's their primary source of income. It's pumping out a flow of cash that's more than enough to cover all their expenses. And the best part? The leftover money gets plowed right back into the asset column to buy more assets, which then generate even more income. It's a beautiful, self-sustaining cycle of wealth. This leads us to what is easily the most controversial idea in the whole book. We are all taught from day one that our house is our biggest asset, right? Well, Rich Dad comes along and says, nope. For most people, your house is your biggest liability. And if it's your largest investment, you're in trouble. So let's break that down. Let's just go back to our simple rule. Does the house you live in put money in your pocket each month, or does it take money out? Well, look at the diagram. You've got the mortgage payment, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, repairs. It's constantly pulling money out of your pocket. By definition, it's functioning as a liability. Now, it could be an asset, but only if you were, say, renting it out and the rent you collected was more than all those expenses combined. So that brings us to the final and maybe the most actionable lesson of all. Once you get these cash flow patterns, once you really see them, where do you put your focus? Rich Dad's answer couldn't be simpler. Mind your own business. And here's a distinction that is so critical. Your profession, that's your job. That's what you do to get a paycheck to fill your income column. But your business is your asset column. See, the problem is most people spend their entire lives minding someone else's business, their boss's business, by just focusing on their profession. The rich, on the other hand, focus on their own business, on building their asset column. The real secret is to use your profession to pay the bills while you build your business on the side. And that really is the crucial question this whole framework leaves you with. When you get up every day, are you spending your time and energy minding your profession, or are you minding your own business? Are you building someone else's asset column, or are you focused on building your own? Because that one choice, according to Rich Dad, is what makes all the difference in the world.